Coming up today, the government proposes a 3.7% increase to next year's budget, with the emphasis on job creation. The extra spending is forecast to push Korea's debt to GDP ratio past 40% for the first time. Korea is buffered by strong winds and heavy rain as it feels the indirect force of Typhoon Rock. The massive storm is lashing an area of Japan devastated by the 2011 earthquake and tsunami. Plus, in an unprecedented announcement, the Islamic State group says its spokesman and leader of external terrorist operations has been killed. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Wednesday, August 31st, here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this morning, the Korean government has proposed earmarking around $360 billion for next year's budget. The biggest slice will be used for job creation and future growth engines. Kim Min-ji starts us off.
Breathing life into the economy while maintaining fiscal soundness. That's the goal of the government's budget plan for next year. The total stands at 400.7 trillion won, or roughly $360 billion, up 3.7% from this year's budget. According to the proposal, roughly one-third will go to health, welfare and labor, while the fields of culture, education and national defense will also see a boost.
The focus will be first and foremost on job creation. We will also provide customized benefits for the socially disadvantaged, as well as boost investment to deal with the low birth rate and aging population.
In terms of overall support for the employment market, the government is looking to increase spending in sectors deemed promising by job seekers and extend support to companies that offer flexible work hours. The proposal also includes plans to step up investment in R&D to foster new growth engines, including autonomous driving, augmented reality, and artificial intelligence. Another portion of the budget is being set aside to push up the low birth rate by offering more financial support for families and encouraging smaller companies to establish more childcare facilities for their workers. But the heavier budget will have implications for the country's fiscal health, as the national debt to GDP ratio is expected to hit a record 40.4% next year. Although Korea's overall debt level is still much lower than that of other OECD member nations, experts say the pace of growth remains a source of concern.
During this administration, national debt is expected to hit $600 billion. That's a rapid rise of $200 billion. Although the government has emphasized fiscal soundness, there are areas that require spending no matter what. As the population gets older, their problem will get worse.
This is why experts point to reforms in the welfare system and specific policies to resolve structural problems as being crucial in securing long-term growth. They say without addressing these issues, financial solutions such as budget supplements and larger budgets will only challenge the country's fiscal soundness. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
And what then about this year's supplementary budget? Despite an agreement among Korea's three major parties to pass it by Tuesday, a conclusion remains out of reach. For more on the division at the National Assembly over the extra budget, Park Ji-won reports.
This full assembly, in which the $9.8 billion extra spending was supposed to be approved, was cancelled after bipartisan negotiations broke down. Both sides are trading blame for failing to pass the budget. The ruling Saenuri Party criticized the main opposition Minju Party for breaking earlier agreements to pass the bill, saying the liberal-leaning party kept adding new conditions, including more funds for the nation's free childcare services and more financial aid for South Korean businesses shut out of the inner Korean Kaesong industrial complex. The ruling party said it's willing to discuss those proposals, but it's too late to add them to the current bill.
An agreement by the floor leaders of the three main political parties is a promise to the people. To break a promise like that for the sake of partisan interests is to destroy a principle and stray from the right path. By now, the disregarding of promises should be a political custom of the past.
But the Minju Party argues the ruling bloc stymied their efforts to provide financial help to citizens. It accuses the Saenuri Party of giving billions of dollars in handouts to insolvent conglomerates while ignoring the needs of ordinary people struggling to get by.
Exactly how is the ruling party trying to run the country when they refuse to allocate a few $100 million for parents and kids, while continuously injecting billions of dollars into insolvent conglomerates?
To that, the ruling party reiterated that the sole purpose of the supplementary budget this time around is to ease the pain of restructuring in the nation's shipbuilding and shipping industries.
At the core of this supplementary budget is help for those who lost their jobs during the restructuring of our ailing shipbuilding and shipping industries. The opposition bloc keeps attaching irrelevant conditions.
Both parties say they are open to negotiations, but neither of them are willing to budge just yet, as the chances of meeting the agreed deadline grow slimmer by the hour. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Creditors of Korea's Hanjin Shipping have pulled the plug on their financial support, pushing the company to the brink of bankruptcy. The company's board will decide on court receivership on this Wednesday. Hwang Ho-jun has the details.
One step closer to bankruptcy. Hanjin Shipping's creditors have decided unanimously to end their financial support for Korea's largest shipping company. With Hanjin's creditor-led restructuring scheme for Hanjin set to end on Sunday, many expected to be left with little choice but to file for receivership before the deadline. The company's creditors, including Korea Development Bank, said continuing to financially support Hanjin would be like, quote, trying to fill a bottomless vessel. Hanjin claimed last week it would raise about $450 million by selling assets and obtaining financial aid from Korean Air, the country's flagship airline, which Hanjin Group controls. But creditors said the self-rescue plan fell short of their demands. They said the company would need to find twice that amount to pay its own short-term debts, its chartered ship owners, and operational costs. According to its mid-year report on June 30th, Hanjin had total debts of about $5.5 billion. The company has yet to make an official statement about the credit cutoff. After the news broke, shares of Hanjin Shipping dropped more than 26%. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
Now, after a decade-long political debate, a law on North Korea's human rights is finally set to go into effect in September next month. South Korea will play a greater role in shedding light on crimes against humanity, with the ultimate aim of bringing those responsible to account. Connie Kim reports.
A new law on North Korean human rights is set to go into effect next month, which aims to tackle abysmal human rights violations in the reclusive regime. The act was first submitted in 2005, but as liberals opposed to the establishment that such law would deteriorate inter-Korean relations, the bill was held up in parliament for 11 years until March this year. South Korea's unification ministry in charge of inter-Korean affairs will set up a human rights foundation to propose policies over humanitarian aid to be sent to the North Korean people. The foundation will also support relevant civic groups to monitor human rights situation in the North. A North Korean Human Rights Record Center will also be established to investigate and officially document cases of human rights violations in the reclusive regime. Up until now, such violations were investigated by government-funded research centers and agencies. The records on North Korea's human rights violations will be handed over to the Ministry of Justice every quarter, where they'll be administered in a North Korean human rights archive. The ministry's archive aims at keeping tabs on those who are responsible of human rights violations and hold them accountable for their crimes in the future. Contentious issues remain in the newly set law, especially whether the law will be able to support North Korean defectors living in third countries through civic groups. An official from Seoul's Unification Ministry said such issue will need to be discussed further after the law goes into effect, considering diplomatic relations with third countries. In addition, there is criticism that no specified objective has been set for the human rights law, as in whether it should lean more towards punishing abuses or improving the human rights situation in the north. Pyongyang has always reacted sensitively towards a soon-to-be effective human rights law, calling it a fabrication to forcibly reunify the Korean peninsula. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
The United States is upping pressure on North Korea for its provocations and human rights abuses. In the latest series of measures, the U.S. State Department has submitted a report to Congress aimed at promoting initiatives to enhance international awareness of and address the human rights situation in the North. The report details 23 countries that host North Korean forced into work in labourers to earn hard currency for Pyongyang's nuclear missile programs. The list includes China, Russia, Singapore and Thailand. Experts say the list, the most comprehensive ever, could put pressure on those countries to end such practices at a time of North Korea's provocations. In July, the US imposed its first ever sanctions on North Korean leader Kim Jong-un for his role in the country's human rights violations. South Korea has confirmed 2 of its nationals who were last seen near the China-North Korea border are missing. Seoul's foreign ministry says a South Korean consulate in the region initially received reports of 7 missing people, but 5 have since been located. The ministry noted there's growing concern over possible acts of terrorism or kidnapping by Pyongyang, especially in the wake of a string of high-profile defections to Seoul by North Koreans. Threats from the regime prompted the South Korean embassy in Beijing to issue an emergency notice to its citizens to stay away from the border area and avoid all contact with North Koreans. South Korea's top central banker has pointed out the country's ageing population as one of the top challenges the nation faces. As for the US Federal Reserve's key interest rates, the BOK chief says he sees a rate hike on the horizon. Hwang Jie has the details.
Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol says that the probability of a rate hike from the US Federal Reserve has strengthened. Lee's comments came in a meeting with experts on the current economic conditions on Tuesday. Pointing to recent remarks by Fed Chair Janet Yellen, the BOK chief said that the U.S. Central Bank is in the direction of raising rates. Although the Fed chair was vague on when rates could be raised, she did hint on a possible rate hike this year in a speech last week, highlighting the improvement in job markets and solid growth in consumption. With that, analysts say Korea's central bank has less room for a rate trim to prop up the slumbering economy, considering the risk of massive capital outflows. The BOK is set to hold its monthly monetary policy meeting next week. Over on the risks the economy is facing, the Bank of Korea governor emphasized that there is an urgent need to come up with measures to tackle the country's aging population. Among other challenges like a snowballing household debt and a possible rate hike from the Fed, he said the rapidly graying population in Korea deserves the most attention. He added that the government has to lay out effective measures in a consistent manner, regardless of changes in administrations, to tackle the issue. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
Now, most of Korea is feeling the blustery influence of Typhoon Rock that has made landfall in Japan. Korea's central region, including Seoul, can expect gusty winds and up to 50 millimeters of rain on this Wednesday. It's going to feel a lot more like autumn as well. The afternoon high in Seoul is going to top out at just 19 degrees Celsius. That's 5 degrees cooler than Tuesday's high. So it would be highly advisable to have an umbrella and a jacket handy today. Typhoon Rock, the 10th typhoon of the year, has caused power outages and traffic chaos in parts of Japan. In northern Honshu, Japan's main island, scores of flights have been grounded and public transportation severely affected, with torrential downpours and wind speeds of up to 160 kilometers an hour. Evacuation orders were issued to almost 500,000 people. Fortunately, as of early Wednesday, no fatalities have been reported. The number 2 man in the Islamic State group is dead, according to a media arm of the terrorist organisation. The circumstances of Abu Muhammed al-Adnani's death were not revealed, but he's believed to have been killed in Aleppo, which has been under heavy fire from multiple rebel groups, as well as Russian and American airstrikes. The 39-year-old Syrian national was the Islamic State's Director of External Operations and main spokesman. He was widely known for inciting lone wolf attacks on Westerners. He encouraged followers to do anything they could to kill non-believers. The US government, which had a $5 million reward on al-Adnani's head, has yet to comment on the report. EU antitrust regulators have ordered Apple to pay $14.5 billion plus interest in back taxes to the Irish government. Investigators declared that a special scheme Apple was using, which allowed them to channel their profits through Ireland, was illegal. Apple and the Irish government say they will appeal the decision. The ruling is part of an ongoing dispute between Apple, Ireland and the European Union. In 2014, EU investigators accused Ireland of dodging international tax rules by letting Apple shelter profits worth tens of billions of dollars from tax collectors in return for maintaining jobs. Well, that's all we have for now on this Wednesday morning here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom. Have a great rest of the day. Goodbye.